So, which one do you want to start with? Do you
I
want to start with
I want to start with the Rittenhouse verdict
Okay, yes. So, to start off, we're gonna just briefly touch on the results of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial.
because the results haven't changed from what we speculated last week. So we this won't be too long of a segment, but we do have to talk about the developments that have happened after the verdict.
So, one, we were wrong in that he didn't get the weapons charge like we thought he would.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned that last week too.
Yeah, but yeah, he got off all five charges, not guilty, free to go. We've already talked at length as to why the murder charges were not going to stick and how they were better off going for something like manslaughter or wrongful death or anything that was just not murder.
I can't believe he didn't even get the reckless endangerment charge.
I am surprised he didn't get the reckless endangerment charge, but then again, I'm also inclined to believe if he isn't going to get the murder charge because of the fact that you couldn't prove that if you couldn't prove that if he wasn't attacked that those people would have still died. It's kind of hard to argue reckless endangerment because the only way you could argue it is by nature of him bringing a gun, but other people had guns
Yeah. At the
and
end of
they
the
didn't get the reckless endangerment charge, including one of the people he shot.
yeah, at the end of the day, we're not legal experts. The moments that are most revealing about the case is in the trial.
Yeah.
There are things revealed in trial that is never expressed to the public media.
Yeah.
And so there are bits and pieces of information where we have to bite the bullet and say this was probably a correct verdict.
Yeah, I mean,
Which,
at the end of the day, it came down to the jury, and while some people may want to claim white privilege, there was definitely an aspect of white privilege. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it was white privilege in the way we stereotypically think about it, in the
yeah,
sense that I think, in my opinion, he got off in part because he's white, but I think if this was a minority, they would have just gotten they would have stacked up lesser charges on him. I feel like if he was a minority, they would have stacked up lesser charges on him and that would be enough to send them away. But I feel like with Rittenhouse is a little bit of a George Zimmerman situation where they got overzealous with so much media attention that they thought they could get a higher charge than was actually available given the
yeah.
evidence we had.
I mean, there has been a lot going around about the prosecution doing a horrible job.
Oh, don't get me started on the fact that they just did not go about this well.
Yeah. Which I don't think would have had much impact on the case if the prosecution was good. I don't like. Of course, morally, we have problems with this case, but
Oh, morally, he is absolutely culpable.
we can treat him like a piece of garbage all we want, as long
Yeah,
as we don't give any harm to him. Do not go after him whatsoever.
yeah. Please don't death threats, no harassment, none of those things. They don't solve anything. In fact, they can only make things worse. Especially because this kid is currently going to be the conservative darling child,
Yeah,
which means that any and every bad thing that happens to him from the left will be blown straight out of proportions. And especially in our more divided time and our more propagandized right wing media, you best believe we would hear about it every damn day for the rest of the year.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So this was probably the most likely outcome to come out. We may disagree with it, but
yeah, it's trust us. This was not what we wanted. We wanted him to have consequences for his actions, but we also had to be a bit realistic and understand that just because we wanted it doesn't necessarily mean it was going to happen.
yeah,
And since then,
it's
Rittenhouse has he's notable for two things since going out. One, they're going after Lynnwood
yeah.
because Lynnwood kind of screwed him over. In part one, Lynnwood set him up to be with Proud Boys, which
It, 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 it,
it's
I hate to say it tarnished his image because I mean it's Rittenhouse we're talking about.
but at the same time, you had an underage client and you brought them to a known white nationalist organization after posting $2 million bail.
I mean,
What kind of lawyer are you when you do that? And obviously, we know Lynnwood is fucking crazy, but
yeah,
still.
And it was to the point where it convinced the Biden team to label him, or not label him, but implicitly label him as a white supremacist.
Yeah,
Which,
which
based on what we've learned from the Tucker Carlson interview, it's it's tough to label him that. Of course, there is always the aspect of deniability,
yeah,
but knowing how much of a lunatic Lynnwood is,
yeah.
I'm not. I'm I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt, and this is not a right wing perspective.
Yeah.
I feel like this could be interpreted by the left fairly easily.
So here's my thing about everything that Rittenhouse has done since. One, I do think he should have gone after Lynnwood because despite how I do not like Howard Rittenhouse as a person, and I do not think what he did was good, I do 100% agree Lynnwood screwed him over. Lynnwood was not a good lawyer to him, and I believe that Lynnwood should be punished for that. And so I do support him in going after him. Lynnwood is a liar. He's a propagandist. He is, in my opinion, a complete and total psycho and a hack. And if someone's going to bring him down, I mean, if Rittenhouse is going to be the one, good for him.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have, which is his statements on Tucker Carlson. So if you didn't know, he went ahead and had a one-on-one interview with Tucker Carlson. And if you don't know who he is, one, he is the largest political pundit in the United States currently. Two, he's a massive figure in conservative media. And three, he is just an all-around piece of shit. Obligatory, fuck you, Tucker Carlson. Anyway, so he had an interview with Tucker Carlson, and he said some things that really got conservatives riled up. One, he said that he's not a white supremacist and that he supports BLM.
Which is why we are more like willing to give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to like the fact that he's been framed as a white nationalist.
So, for me specifically, here's how I view him. So, for one, he mentioned how he supports BLM, and he also mentioned the fact that he feels that he was lucky that he was able to get off the way that he did because he knows people of color put in the same position would be treated way worse by our legal system, which is true. So here is my overall perspective on who Kyle Rittenhouse is as a person. I believe Kyle Rittenhouse was a boy that was raised in a conservative environment, and through the highly politicized nature of our media and social media as he grew up, he, like his family, probably got more attached to the more crazier aspects of conservatism as it became mainstreamed more. And thus, when the BLM protests were happening, he probably believed that, well, oh yeah, I support like Black Lives Matter. I don't support like the riots, or like, you know how some people say, I support Black Lives Matter, but I don't support BLM, the organization?
Yeah.
I could see him as that type of person, that type of person that's like BLM, the organization is corrupt and evil and blah blah blah, and they're just causing trouble. But Black Lives Matter as a slogan is fine. There have been many people that hold that opinion, and while in my opinion it is entirely contradictory, I do understand the logic where it comes from. So I can see how he may have been that type of person, and he really thought that this was his chance to do something good, and that he would show his, in his own weird twisted way, his solidarity by protecting Kenosha from these rioters that were just destroying the city and not really giving a good political message.
Yeah.
Maybe in his own twisted mind, he thought that maybe he was doing a service to both sides, both the conservatives that were against the riots and the good people on the liberal side that were for BLM but weren't rioters.
Yeah.
He's a young boy. We do have to remember that, meaning he's highly susceptible to propaganda of all kinds. And given that the adults in his life very clearly set him up to fail, such as having an adult friend purchase a weapon for him and his mother taking him to a BLM rally unchaperoned with a loaded weapon and did not stay with him, plus any other adults that knew him that were going to be there did not watch over him, clearly shows to me that he was set up to fail by the adults in his life. And that led to whatever his misguided views are. And since going through this trial, for one, he understands especially how badly Lynnwood screwed him by showing him by having him hang out with the Proud Boys. because I probably, in my opinion, that picture that you have, it's him throwing up the OK symbol and he's hanging out with Proud Boys. In my opinion, looking back on it, it's very much you can tell this is a dumbass kid that thought he was being cool
Yeah.
because his life has been completely changed. He has killed two people, injured another. He is in national news. He was in jail on 200 million baht. At one point considered, let's be honest here, public enemy number one.
Oh
For
yeah.
a solid week and a half to 2 weeks, man was probably public enemy number one. And so, like, that changes him a lot. And I think he, as time went on, as the trial led up, he realized that the Proud Boy incident wasn't good, especially as we then saw later on throughout the year with the Donald Trump debates where he supported the Proud Boys, and then obviously the January 6th insurrection, where many members of Proud Boy leadership were in attendance and were coordinating assaults. I can see how maybe he, over time, realized, oh my God, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
And I think my overall opinion of him is that he is racist, but not maliciously racist.
Yeah.
He's racist in the sense that he has his whiteness, which, if you don't know, whiteness is a sociological concept of white the white perspective being the default and thus all other perspectives being considered othered. So I would say that he kind of suffers from his whiteness, and that is what makes him racist. And I do say racist with a bit of quotation marks because I'm not trying to compare him to real malicious racists that
Yeah.
are in power.
Well, what you're talking about is not explicit racism, which really most people in society don't have anymore. A lot of it is more systemic.
Well, I mean, we have people that are like that. You have the
I'm not.
Tucker,
I'm not
yeah,
saying. I'm not
like
saying people
the
are
general layman,
the general public. I mean, like, of
yeah,
course, you got politicians
and the
and
news media pundits and
who
all of
are
that,
explicitly racist,
or
but
or your right wing trolls online.
but you've got people who are like, oh, I'm not racist, but and the way that they talk about certain people and
Yeah,
the way they act out in public is more of a result of systematic racism and not explicit racism.
yeah. So I think he's racist in the sense that he's more just like
A
it's more,
product of the system.
yeah, he's more of a product of a system and less of any individual malice and hatred he has. Because you have to remember, he didn't kill any black people.
That that is fair.
Like, we call him a white nationalist and everything, but we even have to remember that even within the context of the crime he committed, it he didn't kill any black people.
I mean,
It was a BLM. It was a BLM rally, yes, but one of the people he did kill was someone that was agitating the crowd and screaming the N word at people.
yeah,
So, like, I can understand why he was labeled as a white nationalist because he was very much with the aesthetic and the way that he carried himself and the way that things surrounding him were going very much evoked such imagery. But I can also see how that may have been a bit misguided given more of the facts.
because again, a lot of our understanding that he was a white nationalist was because of the framing done by Lynnwood and the fact that he was at a BLM riot.
Yes, and in my opinion, I do think it was intentional by Lynnwood to frame him
Yeah.
as more of a white nationalist to get into that, to tap into that bit of white fear and white rage that was going on during the BLM protests. And I don't think that was something Rittenhouse himself orchestrated. I think Lynnwood is a real racist, and I think he used Rittenhouse to promote it
Yeah, and
in a more covert way.
we do advise people on the left to please take our takes with a bit of nuance. I know we are saying
Not just people on the left, but everyone, people on the left and the right, to understand that when we say things like racist or being a racist or racism, it is not necessarily some type of impugning of someone's entire character or saying they
yeah,
are somehow unredeemable as a person or they are somehow evil.
yeah. I just want to point out specific to the left because we do agree on a lot of stuff. We need to point out, though, that a lot of the perspectives we've had have not been based on facts.
Yeah.
Because,
Mhm.
because again, this is a whole product of Lynnwood's manipulation.
Yeah.
While we are not impugning Kyle Rittenhouse as a person, because he is still morally, we still hate him as a person.
Yeah.
But he did go through the legal system. It got off on all of his charges. We wish that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it
Yeah.
is it. I don't want to say it is what it is because that limits us to fight injustice. But
Yeah. The other thing I would like to say is I don't think it was just Lynnwood. I do believe there was a concerted effort by right-wing media across the board to frame him in such a way.
They embraced him as the poster child of the right.
Yes, they very much did. Like, let's be honest here. If he wasn't in an active trial, that man would have been the premier speaker at the RNC.
Oh yeah.
Like he would have been the premier speaker at the RNC. So
yeah, it's super easy to conflate our diminishing of the severity of Kyle Rittenhouse's actions as a right-wing perspective. So
I wouldn't. Yeah,
I do want to make it perfectly clear that we are only taking it. We are only taking it from white supremacist down to a victim of systematic racism.
and that is not to say that he is entirely like he had no agency. He clearly had agency. He clearly could have not decided to go to the protest. He could have clearly not decided to bring his gun. He could have clearly not decided to stray away from his group. He could have not decided to shoot the initial person. All of those things are, in my opinion, his fault, and he is morally culpable for, and he made the world a worse place for doing so. But I would also like to say that while those things are also true, there was also bigger machinations at play regarding Kyle Rittenhouse that were out of his control, such as, in my opinion, and I said this last week, there were adults in his life every step of the way that failed him and only served to set him up to fail.
Yes.
And yeah, but I think that's really all we wanted to say about Rittenhouse. I mean, if you really want to hear our full takes about Rittenhouse and what we view about him and his crimes, you can listen to our episode last week where we go very much in detail about why Rittenhouse screwed up and why he's not a good person, but especially why the people around him are not good people, and so on and so forth. And yeah, but when we say, like, for example, I just want to clarify this. Kyle Rittenhouse is not a bad person because he is a quote-unquote racist. That is not why I think he's a bad person. Kyle Rittenhouse is a bad person because he was someone that believed in propaganda so much that he believed that it was okay for him to take a gun to a protest and not really think through the consequences that could come from such an action. And I think that short-sightedness, that inability to have any form of self-reflection before doing that, and the consequences of such that led to such tragedy is what made him a bad person.
Yeah.
Any sort of perceived racism, in my opinion, is lesser compared to the complete lack of foresight that he showed in terms of how this could go wrong, and ultimately not owning up to the fact. Because I don't think he has ever owned up to the fact that it was a mistake, which, in my opinion, he should. He should own up to the fact that it was a mistake and that he was wrong to do so. And until he does that, I will still regard him as a bad person. And any accusations of racism as such, in my opinion, are secondary compared to that fact.
Okay. Yeah, I think that summarizes our perspective on this pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you can still treat him socially like a piece of garbage, just don't harass him.
Yeah.
Like,
let's be honest here. That kid is going to deal with the nightmares of killing someone. I mean, anything we say or do will not compare to whatever personal hell that kid is going to go through.
Yeah.
Did you see him have that panic attack when he was exonerated? Yeah. Either way. Moving on to our next topic.